Our next presentation, and follows on perfectly, is going to be Alex Eagles, CEO of Green Building Council. Oh, sorry, Andrew. And I thought it was, I must be having a bad morning. So Andrew and Son to represent the Green Building Council in the future.
Thank you. Kia ora, tēnā koe. Thank you for the time to speak. I ngā mana, I ngā reo, I rao rangitirama, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak. So just some background for you. There's a few slides. I'll just crack through them, but happy to take questions or comments. So the New Zealand Green Building Council was set up as a not-for-profit to drive for quality homes and reduce environmental impacts. So we're about proving places are better at that stage, and very much about, and I appreciate all of the brilliant work the people behind us are doing to drive change as well, and the brilliant speakers before me. So we were set up by a broad range of members, and we've grown to over 450 members who are all keen on climate resilience, lower carbon, water efficiency, less construction waste. So some of them are shown here. We're part of a global movement, so we work with 72 other countries around the world to form a global trajectory to net zero carbon for all buildings and homes, with significant health benefits for our citizens. And I don't think you need to be told this, but ever since I've come back to Aotearoa, I've been told almost weekly that our building code is not up to standard. And so international commentators have illustrated that we have an inefficient building code, and that's making us unhealthy and very climate inefficient. Some of those things are there. That's the OECD and International Energy Agency have made those comments. But it's actually bigger than that. So buildings and homes make up about 20% of our carbon emissions when you include the embodied carbon. And construction waste is over 50% of the waste that's going to our landfill, which is woeful. We have no water efficiency. We have very little resilience to climate change. So there's far more we could be doing. Importantly, the UN has set down sustainable development goals that we should be driving towards, and the majority of those can be impacted by healthier, warmer buildings and homes. It's a really special moment, and it's a really great time for you to take action and drive change, because there are now tools for any type of building in New Zealand. So existing new buildings or new fit-outs can use a tool called Green Star. New homes can use a tool called Homestar, and I should commend your development organisation, Panuku, for leading with Homestar and the homes they're building. Existing buildings can use Green Star Performance, and any existing home can now use HomeFit to check the warmth and health and efficiency of existing homes. So some of the actions you could take. So Auckland Council could be certifying your new build buildings. Indeed, any new build building you're building could be certified to Green Star. So healthier, more efficient, less construction waste. Any fit out of any building, these happen about once every 5 years in a building's life. And your operations across many of your buildings. Dean Kimpton was seen to see this picked up more and more. What will this mean? It will mean significantly lower carbon, significantly less construction waste, very much aligns with many of your key moves in your framework. So as an illustration, a building down in Wynyard, Mason Brothers, was built to Green Star 6-star. They saw a multi-fold increase in the cycling. They saw a significant improvement in the engagement of their workers. You'll have improvement in resilience to climate change and lower costs for ratepayers. What does the sector think? Well, they say if you want better, healthier buildings, you should certify to Green Star. And I guess the really key point, we greatly commend the Declaration to Climate Emergency, and we think that real action will support this even more than that statement. And the key thing you can do, and you are using Green Star in your own buildings, the key thing you can do is drive change across the whole sector. We can really be a movement to get developers in Auckland picking this up and running with it. Existing building could be verifying to Green Star performance. And in homes, Homestar saves each household in the region of $500 a year. At the moment, you are using none of the mechanisms at your disposal to encourage or nudge developers in the right direction. So that could be $1,000 off the development contributions, could be lower building consents, it could be quicker building consents. These measures would incentivise and drive change while still leaving you with good development contribution income. So just to be very precise about that, let's say your development contribution is $22K per home. One potential is you could lift it for non-resilient, non-low carbon homes to $23K, and you could have $21K for homes that are verified to Homestar, leaving you with the same income but with that differentiation in healthier, warmer homes. What's happening in the rest of the world? Well, the EU will be building nearly zero energy homes from 2020. In California, they'll be building net zero homes by 2020. So a lot of the world is moving on this. And then finally, in New Zealand, 40% of our homes are damp and mouldy. We have one of the highest rates of respiratory disease in the Western world, and it's appalling. It's appalling. And we don't have a nationally consistent methodology for assessing the health of our homes. So HomeFit's been created with input from Auckland Council. We urge you to pick this up, include it within LIM reports of existing homes so that people can see whether their homes are healthy or warm. These are some of the supporters of HomeFit. And all of this comes together to drive us towards net zero carbon in our homes and buildings. We can only do that if we start measuring, encouraging Aucklanders to get to low and zero carbon. So the final point is just actions for the council, is certify your own buildings, but most importantly, let's nudge developers to actually deliver on this. Quicker or lower cost consents, quicker or lower cost development contributions, or lower cost infrastructure growth charges. This will deliver a more resilient Auckland and lower costs for ratepayers. This aligns with your key moves in your framework. 1, ecosystem services. 2, development, climate adaptation. 3, decentralised energy. 4, transition existing buildings. Clean and accessible mobility, and it's real action. Kia ora, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you. Exceedingly clear and action-orientated. I've got probably time for a couple of questions. We'll take Councillor Newman and Councillor Cashmore, but that's it. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning.
Kia ora.
You've touched on the residential sector. I really want you to just give some reflection on the commercial property sector, because that's probably, I think, where we could get the biggest reduction in carbon emissions.
Yep.
New Zealand is at the absolute out there because we don't in this country allow depreciation deductibility. So what's the Green Building Council doing in relation to negotiation with government to allow for depreciation deductibility, and what is your modelled forecast of the amount of carbon emission reduction in the commercial property sector if we were to provide for that?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. I need to look at the depreciation in a bit more detail, but it is clear that as in some instances, some of the owners of the commercial buildings have said that when they go to make an investment, say solar PV or renewable systems, that they face an increase in the capital value of their building, and that increases their rates, and they find that difficult when it could be helping to reduce lower carbon. So they are calling for a distinction there for measures which would lower carbon. We think that would be helpful. The evidence is that building to Green Star, as an illustration, reduces carbon emissions from commercial buildings between 30 and 60%. So that's the potential carbon impact, and that excludes the embodied carbon, which is an increasing and growing important area of importance. I guess the other thing I'd say is we are calling on government to themselves build their buildings to Green Star, and Auckland Council was instrumental when they looked previously at the unitary plan and calling for government to take more action themselves, and I'd welcome that.
Is there any other government in the Western world that disallows depreciation deductibility for commercial property?
I'd need to look into that. Well, I'd need to check. I can reach out to the green building councils around the world.
Can you come back to us? Because
Certainly,
that's probably the most critical issue.
Yep. Really happy to. I think it's a useful potential lever. I'd be happy to look at that.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Newman. Good questions. Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And Andrew, good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Taking on board your DC's recommendations around the housing to incentivise the stars. My query is about landfills and construction waste being over 50% of the tonnage that goes in there.
Yes.
You would have no doubt made some recommendations to MB's potential changes around Act, code and systems for the building. What precisely would you recommend for construction waste? What do you see as the key levers to pull for that?
Yeah, sure. So I think we need to dramatically increase the cost per tonne waste going to landfill, but more importantly, we need to breadthen the coverage. At the moment, we're only got a cost on about 30% of all landfill. I think that's key. But I do think that, you know, in Australia now, the majority of, if you're building in Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, any of the main centres, you just don't do that without Green Star. And the useful thing there is that evidence is at the built stage that construction waste 80% less you've got to hit for Green Star. And while government can move, like for instance with the building code, we would expect that's going to take about 4 or 5 years to get that through, and that's just way too slow, and would urge that you can get a mass movement of change by nudging the private sector in the right direction. So, and we've seen that overseas, so it becomes an embarrassment not to be building to a green standard, and that's mass movement. So in Australia it happened with neighbours, and to such an extent that they had a 4-fold increase in the uptake of energy efficient buildings, and it's happened in Europe as well. So incentivising those levers so people look for an indication that the building was built resilient, low carbon and with less construction waste when they're looking to invest, very powerful. You get the overseas finance all looking for those levers. As an illustration of that, ANZ has declared that they will no longer lend for new buildings that aren't 4.5 star or above in New Zealand. Awesome. So we could help drive that change with some of these suggestions.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick comment. I just want to commend the work that Chris Darby's planning committee will be doing to follow this up and drive some of this. We don't necessarily need to wait till the completion of our climate change action plans out the other end. This work's already underway. And despite the fact that Councillor Wayne Walker and I might have disagreed over the bucket racing, Wayne has been a consistent champion for Green Star, and I want to acknowledge that. So I'll move the thank you to Andrew and seconded Mr Mayor. I'll put that. All those in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. We'll move on